Welcome to episode 7 of Leading Your Legacy. Man, I'm so excited for this one because, as you know, on Leading Your Legacy, we have some phenomenal people who've done some incredibly heartwarming things, and today is no exception. I'd love to welcome Gabrielle Tierney. Welcome.
Thank you.
How you feeling?
Good. Excited.
Yep.
Yeah.
So am I. And to give you a little bit of background as to who Gabrielle Tierney is, this Irish Derry-born lady has done incredible things in the community. And I actually came across Gabrielle from doing work in the community. So Gabrielle invited me to work alongside a few other cool young people in the local community of Labrador Grove and Latimer Road. And as soon as I met her, I thought to myself, she knows what she's doing. And since I came to know her and seemed to learn more about her background and learn more about her love and her clear care for the community, I just thought to myself, wow, man, there are actually people out there who genuinely care about community and who do incredible work. And to hear more about her creative side and the work that she was doing in filmmaking, it really started to make me understand more just how people cross over the different lenses of your life and just make you feel really humbled and just really, really blessed to be around such cool and incredible people. So yeah, I can't wait to share a bit more of your story today. So give me a bit of flavour. What was it like growing up for you?
What was it like growing up? Well, I grew up in a town called Derry. It's actually a city, but it's a tiny city. And it's been made famous recently by the big Channel 4 comedy hit Derry Girls.
Yeah.
So that kind of put us on the map. And it was exactly like that show, actually. That really captures at a capsule my childhood because the writer is a contemporary of mine. So we were the same age in school and she really wrote about sort of my experience. So we have this normal teenage experience of growing up together and all that that brings as a teenager, but with this backdrop, which is quite unusual, of conflict. And, you know, there were bombs often and there was lots of, you know, death around us. Yeah. I took the unusual decision as someone from a Catholic family. I'm not going to say I was Catholic, but, you know, sort of Catholic family background. Yeah. And I went to a sort of Protestant or mainly Protestant school. So that brought its own challenges. Wow. And it was, I actually came from a part of town where there were no Protestants living there that went to that school. Yeah. So there wasn't even a bus that took me there. Oh, so gosh. I had some more times I had to walk to school and get this other bus sometimes that would drop me part of the way. But that had mostly Catholic children on it, and they would like scream at me at the front of the bus, like, no. Gabrielle thinks she's a Jaffa.
Oh God, what's
and
a
Jaffa? Comes from the term Orange, William of Orange, to describe the Protestants. It's like a pejorative name for Protestants. So it's what Catholics would have called the Protestants.
That's mad.
And then I get into the school for the Protestants, and then some of them are saying things like, is Gabrielle Tierney in the IRA?
Oh my gosh.
You really can't win. You really can't win. So, you know, and actually I went there on a bit of a lie because my best friend at the time, her brother was going and he really wanted her to go. Yeah. And so he had to get me to sign up and he told me that they had a swimming pool. And I walked in day one going, where's the pool? Mm-hmm. And they're like, what pool are you talking
about? Oh my God.
I was hoodwinked. So, but also I knew it was an amazing school. And the junior site was right beside my granny's house, so I could get home up to her house for lunch. So, you know, it all worked out.
Love a granny's
it
lunch.
All worked out.
Man, that is so mad. And to me, it's so foreign because I've never been to Ireland, particularly I've never been to Derry, so I never really understand the way in which the Protestants and the Catholics, the conflicts happen. Although someone did actually tell me about that kind of complication. And how did you find like navigating your identity at that time? Because I could imagine when you got all these people trying to tell you who you are in a negative way, or people trying to maybe even tell you in a positive way, you have to kind of clarify who you are. So what was that like trying to find yourself amongst that conflict?
I'll tell you this, I did not grow up in a Catholic household where we went to mass every Sunday. I didn't even really know I was Catholic until I went to the Protestant school. Yeah. That's when I was really othered. And we were put in a different camp, and all the Catholic kids, just before we even knew we were all Catholic together, we ended up hanging out together and having lunch together and playing together and stuff. So it was a kind of othering experience that I didn't really expect. Yeah. But then over time, we all started to blend more with our Protestant counterparts. And actually what it showed me is that intermarriage, intereducation, intersocialization brings these groups together, because no one is sitting down saying, your Bible is worse than my Bible. It's not a theological debate. It was always, why do you have the houses? Why do you have the jobs? You know, it's always about resources. It's like Palestine. It's not about Judaism and Islam. It's about water. It's about land. It's always about these resources, actually.
Yeah.
So there's something universal in that. And actually, so when you go around the kind of Catholic areas in Derry, there are like so many emblems to Palestine, and there's so much international solidarity there, which is what really kind of incubated my political leanings as I grew up.
Oh my, incubated my political leanings. Wow, man, that I'm gonna learn what that phrase means, because it's so cool to hear your perspective as well, because I can really see how you, by navigating this world of people trying to put you in the other category and even ostracizing you in that respect, you had to almost navigate that by understanding, so what is the commonalities here, or what are the real issues. And as you so adequately described, the issue wasn't necessarily the religion, it was what access do we have to opportunity. And when you was growing up in Derry and you started trying to figure out, you know, what kind of pathway do I want to go down, how did you figure out what opportunities were for you? What looked like good opportunities for you? Was it the fact that you could be involved in something that was associated with the Protestants or the Catholic Church? Was it the fact that you could affiliate with political leanings? What was the thing that made you feel like there was opportunity for you growing up? Or was there anything that did?
Yeah, there is a really inspirational group, and especially a person, Eamon McCann. He's a local politician and activist, and his wife, or his partner rather, I don't think they're married, his partner Goretti, they are just the most incredible elders of the Derry political community.
Nice.
And they really took young people under their wing and helped them understand more about politics and how that was meaningful in their lives. And what they want to do was transcend tribal politics, not green, not orange, but working class together, to not battle between, but to look up and say it's up is the problem, and that's what we have to dismantle.
Oh, wow.
And so I just really, really resonated with that. And I got into sort of activism in Derry through them and joined their party, which is now People Before Profit.
Nice.
And it's quite international. And that was sort of really the pathway to my career and activism as I knew it. It was about getting out into the community. It was about talking to people. It was about testing your own ideas. And it was putting your money where your mouth was, sort of getting out there and getting behind the things that were important to you in an active way, not sitting around complaining that things weren't working, but actually being part of the doing. And so I knew that I then wanted to work in the community somehow. And my gateway into that was kind of charities in London. And so when I moved to London, I applied for a charity position, and from there my kind of career grew. I started off in sort of smaller jobs, admin, finance, and actually I really recommend anybody who gets into any role, don't tell yourself, I can't understand maths, I'm not good at maths. Get a handle on finances, because everybody has personal finances and they have to manage them, right? So I got a good grading in there, and then I took that on, grew my charity work, and was able to do that more and more in the community. And to be able to work in your own community and see young people that you've worked with since 14 and then see them age 30 playing with your son.
Wow.
I cannot tell you what, like a joy that is.
Oh, that must be such an amazing feeling, man. And I'd love to learn more about like how you got into that community work in London, because I imagine you moving from Derry to London must have been quite a transition for you. So what was that season like for you, and what was the process for really building that part of your life in a new foreign land for you?
When I was younger, I used to watch this program on BBC Two on a Friday night where it was like this review show, and it was like a cultural review of like the best plays and films, and Barry Norman used to be the film critic, and he used to talk about films, and I was hooked on this. And I remember watching all these people talking about these incredible, you know, things that were happening, and they were all happening in London. And I was like, Derry's asleep, I want to go to London, right? So I just really had this thing that get me to London. It's all happening in London. And I had some sort of a fantasy in my mind that I'm going to go to London, and everything's going to be so successful there. I'll build up some money, and then I'll go and live in New York. And I've just thought I was going to bounce around the planet, just, you know, making money, doing good work.
Yeah, man.
And
Like the sound of that.
and it was good because I got to London and I just fell in love with it. So I stayed here. And yeah, I was drawn to London for the culture. And I got here, and I had a year in Clapham, which was dry. As soon as my lease was up, I was like, Why does everybody come to Clapham when they're Irish and they just moved to London? Like, it's only got pubs. Well, I just answered my own
That's
question.
probably why.
Yeah.
That's probably why.
But I got up to Ladbroke Grove, Notting Hill, and I honestly, I never looked back. That became my home. That became my area, my community, my work, my neighbours, like my other family.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Ladbroke Grove to me felt like a village within a city. It had an element of like the Derry feeling about it.
Yeah.
But everybody was just so cool and mixed and welcoming, and felt like I was getting a real education there about other cultures and stuff, and just all the bits that I wanted from London, I got from Ladbroke Grove.
Oh man, tell us what Ladbroke Grove means to you more as well, because I think as someone who's obviously grown up in Ladbroke Grove, went to college in Ladbroke Grove, I actually had someone on the show called Andre, and he also went to my college, and he can attest to the fact that him not growing up in Ladbroke Grove, he could see how the area itself was very community focused. What do you feel like it means to you? Because there's so much connotation with the history and the work that you've done to support like the history of Ladbroke Grove as well. I'd love to talk a bit more, but what do you feel Ladbroke Grove means to you, having seen it over from a lens of outside the community and now within the community?
You know that you're sort of in a place in history when you're in Ladbroke Grove. You know, like to use that saying, you feel the hand of history on your shoulder, because you're really, everywhere you look, you can see the signs of so many generations. And it's the place where social change always started. It was where the fight back always was. You know, it's even sort of pre-Windrush, you know, we learned about so many fascinating things, but especially from sort of the 50s onwards. Freston Road declaring itself independent from the country, like, you know, that is just such a vibe. And now I didn't know just on Preston Road, right? So Portobello Road, the creativity, the music, the art, the culture, it's a really interesting place where working class people feel like they own it alongside wealthy people who've been here for generations, and they sit side by side sort of, I would say, in a kind of equal ownership, whereas in other parts of London there's just that separation, you know. But in Ladbroke Grove we all vibe together, and that's where all the cool music comes from, and the connections, and you know, that you feel like you can be a part of something exciting when you're here.
That's so interesting to hear about, like, the homogeny of the different classes and hear about that from your perspective, because I've definitely experienced that myself as well, as somebody who knows people from all over parts of the Ladbroke Grove, and being able to have conversations with them about almost anything. It would be the case where I'd wear a shirt and the shirt would say like, "Oh, rest in peace, someone who's passed away," and I would be with someone who's very affluent, and they would just be like, "Oh man, what happened to that person?" Or you go to your community, like, "Is that your friend on your shirt?" And the whole conversation is not always the same, of course. You know, not everyone has the same perspective, but the respect is always there, and I think that's not something that I think is shared in all communities. And one thing I really love to understand from your perspective as someone who's still learning about community and giving and growing in community is, what do you feel creates a respectful community in your perspective as someone who's seen communities in Derry, seen community in London? I would suspect has seen different communities across the world. What generates that respect from them, and how is it necessarily created if you've seen it in that way?
I think it's almost that piece that I learned when I was at school, is that we can actually be different and start off coming from a separate place. But if we're around each other and we respect each other, and then we get to learn and understand about each other, then that brings it all together. And there's such a strength in our diversity, because we know that we have this amazing creative community that can bring every skill, every type of music, every type of food. I want to be careful that, you know, mixing cultures is not just about like white people eating curry. You know what I mean? It's like, it's genuine respect for like other people, and learning about them in a humbling way, and making sure that you, whenever you're interfacing with people, that it's an equal exchange, you know, and that it's respectful, and that you're also brokering opportunities for everyone in that mix.
Yeah, that's really insightful. And I love the whole idea about the white people eating curry isn't necessarily if it's a community, because obviously you can go out and eat some curry, but if you don't understand where the curry comes from, you don't understand the origins of the seasoning, you don't understand the cultural history behind it, and you don't understand about the partition back in the 1945 and what that did to the communities there, you'll be eating the food but forgetting the people who necessarily created it.
Yeah. Exactly. And just having that human connection to all of the people in your midst, you know, at the time of recording, we've had a really awful earthquake in Morocco, and we know that there's a massive Moroccan community in Ladbroke Grove, and there is just so much sorrow. And I know for so many people that is going to be unbelievably painful, trying to find out about their loved ones, but also it's going to trigger the losses that they've experienced and felt through Grenfell. You know? So that's really deeply sad, and I think there is a sense of solidarity. People in Ladbroke Grove, everybody is sending their thoughts and condolences and trying to be there for their Moroccan neighbours, and that's really important.
Yeah, and I definitely send my blessings as well, because I've been under a rock in terms of like what's been happening globally. So that's just something for me to take in and something I'm going to action on. And I really want to know from your perspective as well on that particular point about how global devastation can really impact local community. You know, we know that in the community there was like a big situation that happened back in 40th of June 2017, and the effect it has had on the community. And obviously Grenfell Tower fire will go down in history with regards to something that will affect multiple generations. And I just want to get your perspective on, you know, as a community, like what have been the things that you've seen has been constructive outputs as a result of that from what you've seen. You know, have you seen, you know, certain initiatives really to help and bring together the community? Have you seen younger people taking more leadership in ways that you really respect and appreciate? I know we'll talk about Mozilla City CIC and what has been done there, but just more widely speaking, have you seen anything that's given you hope as to how communities can really support and protect each other due to global devastation and local devastation as well?
I think probably the first good outcome, if there ever could be a good outcome from that awful tragedy, was a more honest conversation about the treatment of people who live in social housing in the richest borough in the country. I mean, I think we've been screaming it from the rooftops in North Kensington for decades, but it became absolutely irrefutable, and the council had to listen and the country had to listen. And so being able to have a much more honest conversation is the starting point for all positive change, I think. So from that, we've definitely seen some, you know, new groups have formed, there's been investment. I know you've asked me what are the positive changes. I want to be really positive.
Let's be honest, if it's not, then it's not.
It's been a drop in the bucket.
You
know, I have met with a really incredible woman called Lucy Easthope, who she's a disaster recovery specialist, and she talks about the kind of reparations program, if you want to call it that, how insufficient it's been in her eyes. She's been to everything from the Christchurch earthquakes in New Zealand. She was 9/11. Like she's flown all over the world and this was in her country. She's a Scouser. She's come out of the Hillsborough tradition actually because of that awful tragedy in Hillsborough. That was sort of her response to that growing up, was her motivation to work in disaster recovery. And she says that the Grenfell response has not been good enough anywhere near, you know, in terms of rebuilding the community and understanding the impact. And I sadly just tend to agree. And I'm not sure, I don't know anybody in the community that thinks that there's been enough done. And we know that, but together we're just working to put the pressure on wherever we can, and we have to see what the inquiry will lead to. You know, people don't have very high hopes for that either. But, you know, it's in some ways it's brought people together, in other ways it's torn people apart. I know some people now that won't even come to work in the area because it's become quite toxic in terms of, you got this funding, your project got this, you know, and
it gets political.
I think that the aftermath of Grenfell was, you know, so toxic for the wider community, and we're still recovering from all of that, really. I could imagine we're recovering, and I, as someone who lives in the local community and has grew up here, I think, you know, you can really see how people disengage with each other in moments like this, and people engage with each other as well because they want to have more conversations on things. And when the opportunity provides, like with Kids on the Green, what they do, and seeing more conversations that's happening with the democracy and trying to spearhead change, I think people want to say what's going on. But I think when they see how there's devastation in the community, and they see how there's a lack of investment in the community, and even if there is investment, how proactive is the investment? Sometimes it's quite idle. It's like, we'll invest, but we don't really want to be on the ground and see what is actually going on. We just want to look like we're solving the issues, which I think is something that we need to discuss and need to consider how we move forward in terms of how do we actually constructively and proactively produce
long-lasting generational development in communities.
Exactly. Not short-term performative, one-off, sort of parachute in, big PR fanfare and out. That's really unhelpful.
Absolutely. And even on that note, I know that you're doing a lot of great work on Women's Illicity, CIC, and obviously I'm supporting on that. I'm still new and I'm still learning and understanding more about how I can utilize my platform and utilize my networks to really amplify what's going on. But talk more about how that's come into play from your perspective and what you hope to see the benefits of that in the community as well.
So Max Illicity is it's an organisation made up of local young people, including yourself, who are leading a co-design project with the council. It's a building that is made up of 3 individual bays under the Westway. And it's 18,000 square foot. I think it's around 10 million to rebuild. And it's going to be an incredible asset for adult social care in Kensington and Chelsea for learning disabled adults in the borough, as well as a wider community space. And there's going to be areas for local communities and organisations to use, but the cafe is going to be kind of the jewel in the crown, where there's going to be performances and clubs, and it's a really, really exciting part of it. I think this is an example, if we get the right lease that we want, because that's still, we're in that negotiation, aren't we? This is why we got our best lawyer on the case. But if we get a long enough lease on that, I think that is an example of generational transformation that we can do in the community. And that's actually a genuine example of the council working with us, letting us be independent, letting it be led truly by young people. And this is a huge asset to bestow. And actually, we just need the opportunity to show that these young people can do it, they can run it. Yeah,
absolutely. And I really think that it's going to be a really important development as well, because when I heard about their plans, I said, look, I can support however I can, because I think this is definitely something that needs to be created in the community, particularly to service the young people who, quite frankly, as an aftermath of Grenfell, they'll be leaving the community in the next, 5-10 years when they grow up from primary, secondary school, university. So right now was the most important time, I think, in this day and age to really create this space for young people to feel as if they can be creative, or they can engage in their community, or they can utilize those spaces for their benefit. I think it's going to be really important. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how that work goes on. And speaking of capturing what young people do, I know that you've done a lot of work within film making and using your platform. I remember you showed me something called Rice and Peas, and I was like, Mamba. I was like, hey, that's it. But if you could talk more about how that's really affected your perspective on community and how it's really shaped the way that you lead your legacy as well, I'd love to hear more about that.
I think actually filming is an incredible way to create and leave legacy, to document and tell the story of a person, a place, or a thing. It's just a really phenomenal way to do that. And young people, everybody got a camera in their hand, and everybody's a filmmaker every day on TikTok and whatever. But sort of before this era of the proliferation of smartphones, I'm talking 15 years ago, working with young people, training them up on cameras and editing and storytelling and how to map out the characters and how to have them have a conversation with each other, and being able to do that with local young people. And they were so energizing because their ideas were popping and we were mixing it all up, and they were so charming at getting new people to interview. And so we managed to pull together our first film within the Octavia Foundation, and this was called Grove Roots, and it was the history of Labrador over the last 50 years. And it just kind of skyrocketed. It was in Time Out, the screenings that we did, and it was really well received. And the young people on it, some of them are still doing film now. And that's just amazing to hear. But actually, we didn't do it to learn filmmaking skills. We did it to learn storytelling skills, documenting skills, teamwork. And so, I'm still in touch with nearly that whole team, and 15 years later, and I've met their kids, and, it's so lovely. So in terms of a legacy building project, telling the story of your area with your people is an incredible way to do that. I
really appreciate that, and particularly the legacy building piece, because I think, particularly with younger people as well, I think there's so many stories that go missing. because sometimes they don't have the voice to be able to tell it, either the voice through the media or either the voice through, you know, their confidence or the voice through their networks. Essentially, they're not able to reach those areas, and I'm really appreciative of the fact that there have been stories that have been told, and it has been done in a way that really creates this narrative that this is the authentic truth behind this. Isn't a manipulated story that's been like put together, whitewashed to make sense for the corporate few who are able to accept it. It's, you know, it's something that genuinely comes from the heart of community, and I'd love to know as well, and I have my own perspective on this, and I'd love to have more of a conversation on that as well. But what kind of stories do you think should be told about communities or within communities that you've seen that you haven't seen enough?
I think that there's a lot of money and resource to talk about white people positively as heroes, as saviors, as good people. I think the tide is changing with that, I have to say, but you know, it's still not enough. And I think we have to have more honest conversations about, you know, Britain's colonial history.
Absolutely.
And actually it has a present day impact.
Absolutely.
You know, so I'm really interested in sort of the white gaze and Eurocentrism as a blonde woman with blue eyes, white skin, you know, it's you have to be so careful of the way that we represent people and how that makes people feel.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that people pat themselves on the back if they have one light-skinned black person in there, you know, and it's but they don't even see their own blind spots on this stuff. So I actually think, yes, I mean, I'm talking about representation rather than stories. I think that I think we have to get into more human stories about, you know, real people that have done real things, a bit like what you're doing with this podcast. You know, it's like we are in such a celebrity culture where,
absolutely,
or even whenever we look at sort of legacy builders, I guess when I look around my son's school and I see things like, you know, it's great that Mary C. Cole and everybody's there, but do you have to be a Mary C. Cole to be taught to your child? Like, why can't just a great local nurse in our community?
I know, that's right.
You know, like there are people all around us who are amazing, and I think we have to be really careful about spotlighting superheroes because actually it has the opposite effect. It makes you think that that's untouchable, that you could never be that. Where if you present people who are sort of more accessible in their greatness, you know, then that actually makes people think, yeah, I could do that. I could be that person. So I think we need to tell more stories of real people.
Fantastic.
Could I just
go.
Because I've talked to Akil about this before, how like for minority people, we have to constantly be seen as sort of inspirational.
Excellence all the time.
Excellence all the time. Only black excellence, you know what I'm saying? Or only minority excellence. Or the fact that our pain and hurts because of the white gaze is consistently used as like supposed to be used as motivation instead of us being able to feel and heal from it, instead of using it as, oh, this is what's to make me do better, because you can only run on trauma for so long before you need to actually heal to continuously progress, you know what I'm saying? And I feel that way, especially since with the advent of black exploitation films. Like, I'm not talking about the 70s and 80s ones, I'm talking about the 12 Years of Slave, the Django, and all that shit, where they used black pain to then like give white people like a structure of like, oh yeah, no, we still help them and blah blah blah. And it's like, no, you know, it's how I feel completely. So hearing you say that makes me feel better, because I've tried to get out of charity work, because I've been in charity work and you know, tonight there. But
Actually, it's quite linked to charity work in that sense, because I am a charities consultant. I support charities to kind of become stronger and better. But I do have some sort of almost institutional issues with charities.
Work.
Yeah, you know,
because charities are constantly putting a band-aid on the issue instead of trying to actually fix it. And whenever you tell them that, they're like, but if it's not broke, don't fix it. But it's like, if you constantly put a bandage over an issue, it just festers more. You aren't fixing it.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And there's a really interesting concept that psychologists use called the drama triangle.
All right. Okay.
Where you're either the victim, the rescuer, or the perpetrator.
Oh, wow.
And so people that are in their lives all the time, like, burn me, and this horrible person shouted at me today, and oh, can you help me? So they're always asking people, be my rescuer, and they're always telling you about this awful perpetrator, and they're on the drama triangle constantly, right?
God.
It suits them. But actually, I believe that the whole charity sector is on the drama triangle. So we are the rescuers. We're so good. What could anybody do without us? Aren't we just wonderful human beings? And then it's the poor little beneficiaries that need us. It's the deserving poor. It's all of this. And then it's like the big bad government or big bad society is the perpetrator. And actually, that's so disempowering.
Absolutely.
It's no one's going to get off that triangle as long as everybody's still playing their part. And actually, the vision and mission of every charity should be how we can close this down.
Yeah, that's exactly what I've been thinking,
Because with Dolly Parton's charities, she had like an initiative within her town. She kept it small, and then that initiative closed down because she finished the job. And like with a bunch of charities that do it well, they don't survive or stay around for like indefinitely. The problem that I have with the Princess Trust, blah blah blah, all these things is that they're not trying to actually fix the problem.
No.
They're trying to divert the attention away from the problem and give who they feel are deserving of help, support, recognition, or even to be listened to and supported. The support, instead of just realizing that everyone deserves the need, the support. It's just a safety net to progress equally. But instead, charities are definitely holding up a hierarchical caste system within the UK to keep poor people poor and rich people rich, especially when they're telling their beneficiaries that they shouldn't go and do further action or give them the support or understanding or just treat them like the same way the council would when they are in distress. I see it all the time.
Cyclical. Well, actually, the charity sector in Britain comes out of a tradition of the Victorians saying to government, don't tax us. Let us do the giving. If you don't give us big taxes, we're going to be really nice and we're going to set up foundations and we're going to help the deserving poor. So leave it to us, government. And that's why if you say to France, somebody in France, oh, can you donate to my charity? They're like, charity? No, government will do that. Why do we have such a big charity sector? Why should we need one? We should be ashamed of it. We should not need that. It should be the state that takes care of all of the needs of all of its citizens.
And that's why the charities are always shouted out by the Queen in the Queen's address and da-da-da. And when I was literally in the charity system, I would see all these people like being really like royalist and I'm so happy I've got this MB or OB or blah 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 blah. And you're like, you should really be against it. You understand that, right? They take billions away from you, put it into nonsense that they're never going to use, and you're like, please give me your funding and your support and blah blah blah. Instead of actually figuring out how to make revenue yourselves to then support the people around you, you constantly make a thing that is not what is the word
sustainable.
Yes, sustainable. No sustainability. And obviously you've seen it as a consultant. Every charity has that almost.
Yeah, and I find this really interesting as well because from my perspective, I think a lot of my friends talk about respectability politics being very, very prevalent in society and just saying, oh, I'm going to do whatever it takes to be in appeasement with whatever exists so I can get the biggest advantage. And we've spoken quite strongly of the fact that we don't really understand why people posture so much to look like they're making so much impact when they could just do the work and then let the work speak for itself and have a clear opinion. And that's why I'm just happy people are doing stuff like this, because I think, it's just so important people to have real opinions and real perspectives about what they genuinely think exists, as opposed to trying to create legacies that are almost in contrast with their genuine values, so they can uphold their own legacy and nothing gets taken away in a scarcity mindset. I just think there's so much that exists that we just don't really look at or we don't really discuss. which we really should, which is just going to continue affecting us, and it's going to continue taking away from the work we do, you know, on the ground in communities. Like you said, like I've run a not-for-profit, and I would be so happy if one day we look at the statistics and we say, oh, everything's good, cool, we can finish. Guys,
job done.
Everyone, let's go about our business.
Pack
because
up.
ultimately the aim of it was to create this visibility. So if we rate this visibility and we get the opportunities, right, then okay, we're good. All right, you're going to do it? All right, you do it now because you know what to do, and then we can just go off and live with our families and stuff. Because the aim shouldn't be to look the best. It should be to do the best work and then allow it to finish. And as you said, I just don't think enough is put on to legacy pieces where the work ever gets finished.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite ironic in itself. And speaking of work, that I hope that we actually do get finished. I know that we did Destined for Greatness this summer. And I was really, really, really happy with the outcomes of how we did for our first event. Considering it was like 2 months, we had like so many people turn up and, you know, so much support and whatnot. And I just want to get from your perspective, and this is not due to me saying it because I've done it, but I just genuinely like to see it because I saw it and I saw the inception and hopefully see what the outcomes can be. Like, do you think community initiatives like Destined for Greatness can have longevity in the community? And from your perspective, how do you think other communities can create initiatives that hopefully bring together communities in similar ways?
I think that when communities are devolved to have their own influence and responsibility and power, they can create safe spaces among themselves to say the real thing.
Yeah.
And whenever you bring in some flighty consultant, you know, that actually is, you know, there with a format and tells you where to sit and gives you the 4 answers that you could give or whatever, you're never going to get the truth.
Okay.
Whereas Destined for Greatness was actually, you know, people saying together, these are our issues. This is how we want to talk about them. This is how we want to put forward solutions. Then that is actually a really magical space where things that can actually work are said. And I think that safety that you create is a really important thing that should be given over to other communities if they want to come up with the same sort of pathways forward. Also allowing people to be vulnerable and creating a platform where men especially can show vulnerability and can actually really be inspirational to young people to know that that's an important thing to do and that there's real strength in that. I think it was a really interesting balance to have the MP in the room because it was about saying, here's someone who is publicly accountable and we should hold him as such, and he took it well, and there was a long queue of people to speak to him afterwards, which was interesting.
I saw that,
and he took that, and I respected him for coming down to, you know, a community-led event and doing that without, you know, people around him to gatekeep and keep people
none of
back.
that.
None of
No
that.
MI5 agents.
None of that.
CIA.
He didn't need any of that. Good. And then, you know, lastly, the creative space, where that felt quite healing to have that at the end, where there was just something so uplifting and magical about people singing together and, you know, hearing other people perform and saying inspirational things and stuff. I just felt like that was a very, really beautiful flow to an event, and I think that's a great template that other people should consider.
Fantastic. And I'm just so glad that we was able to actually pull it off, because I think there was many things that looked on the day like it might actually mess up completely. But you know what? I think it was a real blessing to actually do that with you and the team. As someone who's part of Mental TSC as well, I feel like it was such a blessing, because I have had a strong feeling for a very long time that, you know, there's so much that needs to be done in community, and there's so much that we still have to get done in community as well. And I think to know that no one really, I think I had a conversation with someone at the community centre, and they said it has never been this busy for years. And
one woman said, no one has come and spoken to this. I've been here 25 years and no one's come and spoke to me like this before and asked me my real opinions. A lot of people are given like, tick this box or tick that box. But to give people almost a blank canvas to say, we're here to talk about what you want to talk about, was really empowering.
I know, and that's kind of ironic because they live there. So imagine you're so happy to hear where you live, you're actually going to ask what you want to see, which quite obviously is common sense, because if you live there, clearly you'd want it. But the fact that we actually be able to do it in such a short space of time as well, which I know we had a conversation, you was like, Akil, like this is actually impossible. Like what we're trying
6
to
months,
achieve,
please.
what we're trying to achieve in the space of like a few weeks, we should really have a few months to do this. But I think the forces are
It
in our
came together.
favor. The forces are in our favor. Fantastic turnout. And just going forward, I just really love the people to know who are listening to this and who really want to learn from your legacy. What do you see the future of community being? You know, not just in the UK, but internationally. Like, what do you see the key ingredients for creating healthy, vibrant, respectable communities being, so it can be in harmony and, as you said, intersect within those different areas that we seek to protect and uphold?
I think that the biggest thing that we can talk about when we talk about legacy, whether it's global or local, we really need to think about the climate and the environment. You know, if we're thinking about legacy, what am I leaving for my son? You know, this burning planet. We've got to really, really make different mindful choices. And I think that we need to do that, and on a local level and on a global level. And I don't think it's about taking your plastic bags to Sainsbury's and reusing them. It really is so much bigger than that. And actually, it's about making consumer choices. Don't align yourself with the companies that are doing bad things.
Yeah.
And actually try educating locally and making these changes that people need to make accessible, because it feels like it's the preserve of, you know, mostly white middle class people who can eco this and refill that and whatever else, and because they can go to this local store on Portobello Road that's like costs so much. You know, how are we actually going to turn this planet around in a way that can be accessible to all of the people that are, you know, living, consuming? And you know, this is a very cramped area. We live under the Westway. I just think that our lungs, our skin, our bodies are being polluted day by day. And we probably have to just sit up a bit more and think about collectively, locally, what can we do? What is in our corner of the world where we can have, encourage, you know, more trees, more plants, better, you know, trips to the seaside to get away from it sometimes. I mean, when we're looking at Maxilla, we're thinking a lot about how we can make that building accessible, how we can filter the air in there, you know, and how we can work with the garden. So, yeah, coming together, respecting each other, living and learning together, all of that is absolutely critical. But we cannot deny that there is a big change happening with the planet, and that we have to make it personal as well as political. Man,
that's amazing. And I think that's such a key sentiment for people to really take with them, particularly from this conversation, because we've spoken a lot about community, you know, what it's like growing up, and, you know, the importance of, you know, giving people a voice. But will people even have a voice if they don't have actual lungs to be able to use their voice? Because then, as you said, the lungs are not able to take in the fresh air, or even take in, you know, the nature as we see it. You know, will they be able to have that available to them? That's something that I don't think we speak about enough at all. And I think it's definitely something that I'm going to consider about how we can have more conversation about that. So I really appreciate your time, Gabrielle. It's been an amazing conversation. And you know,
enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it as well. And I had learned so much in terms of, you know, how much I can, you know, really take more of a lead within the community, and how I can just learn a lot more about, you know, what can we do as a community in order to, you know, look at, you know, society and community in quite an authentic lens. So yeah, I'm just going to really take those forward, and hope those listening and tuning in can take those forward as well. So really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Is there any sort of work that you want to talk to them about, that they can look at, that you're involved in, or can they just find you when they find you?
I would rather people find the people I work with. So I want them to look for Maxilla City, and I want them to look out for another one of our directors, Tayshan, who runs Grow to Know, who's big on the sustainability, and he's changing things for the better. So they need to look up him, because he built a beautiful garden in my son's school.
Oh, man.
So big up Tayshan. And yeah, just all the wonderful young people out there in Labrador and beyond who are doing fantastic work. I'm here for them. Fantastic.
Big up Tayshan once again for the work he's doing. And thank you so much again for coming. I really appreciate it. And that's a wrap for episode 7. Thank you for coming, tuning in, and until next time, we got a season finale for you. Sky!